application.
You might be knowing our services that we offer mainly business registration, but even we register copyrights and neighboring rights. And also we register trademarks, patents, and we are also in custody of a registry called registry security movable properties, where people are using movable property to access credit from financial institutions. They're going to tell you about that you can use your corporate certificate to get what? Financial support from the financial institutions. So for today, I'm going to take you over the Department of Copyright and Neighboring Rights that we do as URSB. So as URSB, we do a number of registrations as I just said. But for today, we are looking at copyright registration and neighboring rights registration. So URSB has registrars of copyright and neighboring rights. And the function of registrar and copyright is the function of the registrar general. But for us, we are assistant registrars. So we are the ones who register the copyright and neighboring rights. And we issue a certificate of copyright after. So as a registrar of copyright, we do a number of functions. And they include processing copyright applications. So when you submit your work for registration, you fill in the form and then you attach your work, your original work, which can be in soft copy or in hard copy. And then we also process applications for assignments. Remember, John told you about assignments, where you can transfer your copyright to another party for a monetary value that will be determined in your work agreement. Then we also register assignments. Assignments are for a temporary period of time. A license is for a temporary period of time. Then it reverts back to the copyright. Then we are also the ones who register the collective management organizations. Like for the case of musicians, the Uganda Performing Rights Society, it's URSB that registers it and supervises it, as well as we advise government on matters of copyright, and then we provide also information on copyright. That's why we are here to give you that information on copyright, and you'll be able to be educated on what copyright is and the procedures and the fees that are going to be paid for purposes of acquiring a certificate of copyright. So I remember someone was able to define what a copyright is. A copyright is an intellectual property. It always involves creativity and innovation. And for this purpose here, we are looking at creativity. And it deals with original works. Here, the author of original works is given protection for his work, so that he has control, exclusive control of how his work is being used, and he has to earn from his work. That's why we give you that copyright certificate, to make sure that you benefit from your creativity and encourage creativity among these other people, so that they see the value of their creativity, that it can be equated to monetary value, and you enjoy it through and from your work. So why are we encouraging you to register your copyright? We're encouraging you to register your copyright first of all for ownership purposes. Once you have a certificate of copyright, it's evidence that you're the owner, conclusive evidence that you're the owner of the copyright of your work that you have created. The creator is the owner. That is number one. Number two, you protect your rights. And when we talk about protecting your rights, remember it gives you exclusive control of your work, to use it, to assign it to anyone, or to transfer to anyone. So you have your right, it protects your rights. And then three, you earn from your work. From your work, you're able to assign it to someone for monetary value. You can also what? Transfer it or license your unofficial record as their owner. Once you die, your work, the successors of your estate are able to what? To track the record of ownership and the benefits will be approved from your estate. So what is protected under copyright? We have a number of protections under copyright, but key to note is what is protected is that the work must be original in nature. We protect work which is original. You don't have to copy someone's work and have it registered. The work has to be original in nature. And the works which are eligible for copyright protection is literal works, artistic works, musical works, audiovisual works, computer programs, broadcasts, sound recordings. These are the provisions of the law. We don't protect ideas, we don't protect titles and character names, historical facts, audio events, works with no original expression, we don't protect. So what I told you earlier, that the key word is original work. Is that which is protected. So we have the law. We had a law as John was saying to you earlier. We had a law, but there are some areas that needed reform for protection and management and commercial exploitation. So reforms were made to strengthen the law, and the law was intended to protect authors, performers, and producers to ensure that the creators receive fair remuneration for the use of their works. Later we're going to see in detail how the law has worked to the benefit of the creators. And then strengthen enforcement against piracy, particularly in the digital environment. You see now most of the work is now sent to the internet. So how are you getting protected? We didn't have that law to protect, but now it's there. Then promote transparency in copyright transactions. Earlier I told you that we're earning about 1.8%, but now the law is specifying how artists should be done, especially for the coloring back tones. I will show you as I present how you will do the next one. And then align Uganda's law with international laws, treaties. We had to demonstrate some of the laws, the international laws, to fit in the current trends, to make our law robust. So those are some of the key areas that the law is focusing on. So above all, the amendment was there to increase digital, was for purposes of increasing digital distribution of creative works. Because now most of the work is distributed online. Yet we didn't have a law. So the law had to cater for that. That's why we had the amendments. And then there are issues of persistent piracy and copyright infringement. I remember some people were like, why do we have a copyright law? But they were thinking like the law is not there, but the law was there. So reforms were done, and those are the areas. We have now increased the penalties for any infringement. Please, one meeting. Then unfair contractual arrangements affecting creators. Remember, the creators were like not benefiting from their works. Anyone could use their works, and then enforcing was a bit difficult. Then big royalty collection and distribution systems. They'll be telling you about the Uganda Performing Rights Society. My colleague will come later and discuss more on how it is and what the system has been, the system that has been developed, how it's going to make people have fair distribution of their incomes using the system that has been developed. Then we need to strengthen Uganda's creative economy. So, these are the key features of the law as per the new amendment. The amendment broadened the definition of a performer to include singers, musicians, dancers, actors, instrumentalists, other persons performing literary, artistic, and musical works or expressions of folklore. Then we have the right to equitable remuneration. These are the areas the act has provided that whenever a sound recording or audiovisual work is broadcasted in public, that is on radio or television, or in bars and concerts, among what I've enumerated there, you have to get some income come to the creator. So the system that Martin is going to talk about later is going to show you how that is going to work. And then the enemies is communicated to the public through the digital platforms. Performers and producers are entitled to equitable remuneration. All that will be shown to you in the developed system, how it's going to benefit the creator. And then the registrar is empowered to monitor the use of works and submit periodic reports while The law again extends to live performances which were not captured in the earlier laws, and then the recorded audio-visual performances were also not recorded, but we ratified them in line with the Beijing treaties. These are international treaties that are applicable to Uganda as we ratified them, the laws. So this one is going to strengthen the legal recognition of musicians' rights holders, create protection against unauthorized recording and commercial use of performances, and improve ability to enforce neighboring rights. This is one of the key features, as we talked earlier. I don't know, I do not understand some words here, but I don't know how many of you have your caller tunes with MTN or Airtel. This is how the distribution of revenues is going to be. Once your song is with a telephone company like MTN or Airtel, this is how the sharing will be for the collaring back tones. So this is how it's going to be. You, the beneficiary is the author. The author will get 30% of the 700 of MTN. And then the performer will get 30% as well of the 700. And then the telecommunication operator, that is MTN or Airtel, will get 31.5%. And then the regulator or other intermediaries involved will get 8.5%. So the beauty with this is the prescribed percentages will apply to contracts that were even entered before the commencement of this act. This act came into law in 2026. But whoever has a contract with those companies before this act, these are the applicable what? Revenue sharing percentages. So let us now work hard to make sure that we make our returns to these telephone companies and enjoy the benefits and earn from your music. So, but make sure that the law has provided for all these contracts that you're going to enter into. These contracts have to be in writing. The contracts have to be writing, and these contracts have to be registered. So the moment you license your work, the moment you assign your work, the moment you broadcast your work with a certain company, the moment you do a public performance with some company, make sure that you have entered into an agreement. And then they should be in writing and contain the prescribed particulars as per that law. The law will provide for the parties, and the law will provide for the remuneration. What are your agreed terms? The agreed terms should be stated in the agreement, and that should be in English. And that agreement is registered by the Registrar of Copyright, who is URSB. So that agreement has to be registered within 6 days from today. When you make an agreement with Hotel 100 today, then make sure that your agreement is fine within 6 days. If you don't register it within 6 days, your agreement is voided. So why the law came into place? This is to reduce disputes over ownership, and then also to promote transparency. It promotes transparency in a way that all of you have equal understanding, both of you on the same table, and then you're able to discuss terms and conditions on your assignments, or in your licenses, or in whatever live performance you're going to do. And then protects musicians from unfair contractual arrangements. At least now you know what you're supposed to do. So there is also a right ownership of copyright and digital protection. The amendment also provides for the assignment of license of economic rights cannot exceed 20 years. Now, once you transfer through an assignment or you license, you cannot go beyond 20 years. That's a new key feature again with the law. This is intended to prevent permanent loss of your copyright work. So you can do an assignment with me, or you can license your work with me for 3 years, but you can't go beyond 20 years. So that work reverts back to you, and it will encourage you to enter other contractual obligations. Maybe someone is better than me in terms of remuneration. So you can enter into another agreement. So you cannot go beyond 20 years. That's the provision of the law. And then gives creators another opportunity, as I said, you can exploit your work again or economically with another entity. Now we produce your work through a registered corporate, certificate of corporate. And whoever fails, if the online service provider fails to block what you have requested him, then attracts a criminal sanction on the service provider. So the implications are there is faster removal of pirated content. Yes, you can act immediately if your work has been infringed. And then stronger enforcement against digital piracy. And then registration becomes important as evidence of ownership. As I have told you, because before you go to the online provider, obviously it's going to ask you what shows that you're not of this one. Then there is still this key feature, technological protection measures. The Act has made it an offense to circumvent technological protection measures used to secure copyrighted works online. You see there are examples given there. Sometimes you have online work which has digital locks, and then anti-copying technologies, encryption systems. You can find that work which is online is protected, but there are some people can circumvent and get that work. There's a criminal offense to that effect. So once you do that, there are penalties. It's an infringement and you're not supposed to do it. So these technological protection measures were put in place to get a protection for digital music, as well as create confidence when you submit your music online. So there are also stronger and international protections. Now the law, as people were saying before, that the law looks weak in terms of penalties. Now we have got increased penalties in the law to the tune of a fine of 2,500 currency points. So when you look at that, you multiply that by 20,000, then you now know how much you pay for infringement or what copyrighted work. And then you can imprisonment up to the tune of up to 10 years. Or you can even be, both. You pay the currency points as well as imprisonment. And the court can further go and grant injunctions to the aggrieved parties, even pay damages and compensation, as well as other appropriate remedies that court gives fit. So, the recognition of international treaties, these are international laws that Uganda domesticated to our system to make our law better, looking at what was missing. So we got some of the sections through the Benin Treaty of Audiovisual Performances, which were never captured before, and then Marrakesh Treaty. Then we have WIPO. WIPO is World Intellectual Property Organization Treaty, and then Copyright Treaty. It deals with copyright, protection of copyright, as well as the WIPO, World Intellectual